What are the most common mistakes that people make when they're interviewing for a job, and how do you avoid those? How do you present yourself in such a way that you stand out from the crowd and actually get the job you're interviewing for? Let's talk about all that today on Creating the Future. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this edition of Creating the Future. Super excited to be with you because we've been in a little series all about the business world and how to create your resume. Now we're going to talk about how to interview. We're going to go from here to how to find your dream job. And then ultimately, what's your working genius? What do you do so well? And with us on the show for all 4 of these weeks is Pastor Tina Blount from Arise Church. But today she's just Tina Blount, and she is the business consultant. She's the one who has been doing this for a long time. Quickly, would you reintroduce yourself, Tina, and just share what makes you, you didn't like the word expert on the subject, but people do pay you to write some of these resumes and teach this stuff. So you're pretty equipped for it. So how did you get into this field in the first place? Just a quick recap again.
Absolutely. Well, I had a 20-year career in corporate America in the field of talent acquisition. So that's where I cut my teeth initially. But then I went to work for a national reemployment company where we helped individuals who had been unexpectedly laid off from their job. And that's really where the butter like hit the bread, because that's where I learned how to help people in the real world, write resumes, interview, all of the things that come along with it.
So good, so good. So we started with the resume writing last week. If you didn't hear that and you need to hear that, go back and listen to that. You may even want to share that with somebody who might
Mhm.
be writing their resume, looking for their job now, as well as today. We could be talking about something that you want to share this with somebody else. It may not be pertinent to you at the moment, but you need to share it with somebody else later. Because today we are diving into the subject of interviewing, some interviewing tips, how to just interview really, really well. So Tina, to start off, what are some of the most common mistakes people make in interviews, and how can we avoid them?
Well, there are so many. We could camp on that one question all
Yeah,
day long.
right.
Partly because it's a lack of knowledge, right? No one teaches you how to interview. No one
Right.
pulls you aside and says this is how you do it. And so I think a couple of things. I think people either talk too little or they talk too much.
Hmm.
And so the talking too much is obvious. Someone is rambling. They just are going on and they're kind of like driving out to left field instead of like focused on the question. But I also think talking too little is just as bad,
Hmm.
because then the employer feels uncomfortable. They're not really getting what they're looking for. It's not a conversational exchange. And so I think those two things right out of the gate are two of the worst things that someone can do in an interview.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm curious about this. You and I speak all the time for a living. We're in meetings all the time. Other people are not necessarily that way, so they might walk into an interview and just be so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety and nerves, and that might lead to them rambling or being really short. Do you know of any tricks or ways of just taking your breath, saying a prayer? I heard somebody say one time, and maybe you can agree or disagree with this. They said, "Do the Superman pose." I thought that was funny. They said, you stick your chest out, your arms back, and you just kind of say, "I got this. I'm gonna nail this." Whatever. Do you have any tips for people, that maybe they're just full of anxiety, they're just nervous?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think at the risk of encouraging someone to be super introspective, I would encourage them to stop and get clear about what they're nervous about.
Mm,
Are they nervous because they desperately need a job? Because if they don't get a job and don't get a paycheck, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage. Like, so get really clear. When you walk in from a position of strength instead of a position of fear, it already begins to change the game.
mm,
When you walk in with the mindset of, listen, I have something to offer here.
hmm.
I'm not just walking in begging you to like me, right? This
Right,
isn't the middle school lunch cafeteria. Like you've got something
right.
that you're bringing to the table. I think those things are huge. But I do think like you can stand in your bathroom and like Mel Robbins says, give yourself a high five up against the mirrored glass and say, you've got this. Come
Hmm.
on, you know how to communicate this. I
Hmm.
think the other thing is practice.
Hmm.
Like Practice. You don't want to be overly rehearsed, right? We're not walking in there sounding like a robot, but I do think you want to think through what you want to say
Hmm.
and practice that, because if you walk in going, this is what I want them to know about me,
Yeah.
like this is really what I want to communicate. If you do that, well, then some of that anxiety lifts.
Yeah, that's so good. Would you recommend somebody, downloading the 100 most common interview questions type thing and just practice through all of them?
I think you can do that. I think you can go to AI. I mean, certainly you can get a book, you can, any of those types of things, but start with the basics.
Hmm.
Employers are evolving in their
Hmm.
interviewing styles. And in fact, if I'm coaching an interviewer, I'm coaching them to ask out of the box questions. But
And you do, and you do.
most are asking the same questions. Tell me about your strengths. Tell me about your shortcomings, right? Tell me about yourself.
Mhm.
Most of them are asking the same types of questions.
Yeah. I think in general, we shouldn't be surprised by any questions that come up. Like there might be something here or there, but we should be prepared as best as we can for the interview questions. I also know that like a lot of AI right now in the format where you can talk, it will interview you and you can
Mm-hmm.
tell it to interview you as if you are such and such company. You got to interview at Coca-Cola. So interview me as a manager at Coca-Cola for this specific position. And you can literally practice by yourself with your AI. I think that's pretty amazing.
Okay, technology has come a long way, a
Yeah.
long way. It can do so many different things, but I'm laughing at the moment because I remember being in an interview with you that I did not realize was an interview. And you asked me, if you had $1 million, what's the first thing you would buy? And on that particular morning, I was living in a townhome that did not have a garage. And I was a drowned rat when I came in to meet with you. And my answer to you was, I would buy a garage. That's what I would buy. I would buy a garage. Well, later I realized that you and I were on an interview and I'm like, you're an idiot. I can't believe you just said that. Like, so occasionally there are people like you who will throw you a question that you do not see coming.
Oh, don't just blame it on me. I've heard you ask people if you were a fruit, what kind of fruit you would be. Do you salt your food and, before you eat it or afterwards? Do you taste it first? Yeah. But all right. So now you've said, I've heard you say this before, that confidence isn't arrogance, it's clarity. How can
Yes.
somebody walk into an interview with clarity?
Well, let's back up to last week's podcast where we talked about the resume. When you are very clear about who you are,
Mm.
you know what you bring to the table. You
Hmm.
know that. If you've done your homework, you will know to some degree whether that's a company that you are you're aligned with, your values are aligned with them. To the degree they've given you a job description, you know enough to walk in and go, okay, based upon what I know, I think we're a 60% match here.
Mm.
We've got room for 40% of questions. So
Hmm.
if you do the work, you walk in with clarity, knowing who you are and what you bring to the table is more than half the battle.
All right, so knowing who you are, I love that. So here's an interview question that you're almost always going to get. Tell me about yourself and what's your greatest weaknesses. Give us some advice on how to respond to those. This is gonna be tough, right? We could do the Michael Scott thing where we tell all of our strengths and say our strengths are really our weaknesses.
Exactly. You can absolutely. Well, and I think that very first question, so tell me about yourself, is the hardest question that you're actually going to ask. Why? Because it's a football field.
Hmm.
It's wide open. So I often tell people, start with where you are. Say thank you so much for asking. I am really excited because I'm in a position right now, a season where I'm exploring new opportunity, coming out of working for such and such company in the following role for the last 7 years. And I'm really looking forward to opportunities that I can take what I've learned and I can apply them. And so that way, when I lay my head on the pillow, and by the way, I've got great sheets that make me sleep really, really well. I sleep like a baby because I know I've worked really hard. What did I just do? I basically just said, here's where I'm at today. This is where I came from. This is where I'm going. And something fun, witty, conversational, connection oriented about
Hmm.
yourself. What you don't want to do is, well, I was born in 1982
Yeah,
to
yeah.
farmers from Iowa, and I've got a dog named Jeb. Like, you don't want to do that. But if you don't rehearse it, that's
Mhm.
exactly what you'll do in the moment because you don't know where to start. You
Mhm.
can tell what people value. They'll say, well, I'm a graduate of Florida State. I'm
Mhm.
a start with where you are,
Yeah,
then go back, then go forward, add a touch of humor.
that's so good. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Let's go to weaknesses. Weaknesses.
Mm.
Everybody knows it. You said it. You've got to somehow turn it into a strength. Or what you have to say is, this is an area I'm developing. This is an area that I'm growing in. This is an area that I've recognized and I've done some work around. So you want to show them all they're looking for there is they want to know, listen, is there something about you that shows me you're an alien? Like when the lights go out, that's what they're looking for. They're looking to know is there something that is on the job description that you're going to struggle with or may need training in. So be honest with them. They're going to find out eventually.
Mhm.
Be honest, not
Right.
overly honest,
Mhm.
but honest.
Yeah. So how do you, in these moments like this, how do you communicate your value? How do you communicate I'm awesome without sounding like you're bragging? How would you say?
Well, I think the way you do that is through stories,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves a story. And the best predictor of future performance is past
Mhm.
performance.
Good.
And so I often teach people the STAR technique when they're interviewing. Basically, you're going to tell somebody about a situation, what the task was that you were tasked with, what the action was that you took, and then what the result is.
Mm.
And if you'll just remember that the STAR technique, you'll tell them what they need to know in a very conversational way that allows you to shine without blinding people with arrogance.
That's so good. That's so good, Pastor Tina. Thank you so much for that.
Of
All right,
course.
so it's going to happen in interviews where you get asked a question that you're just not prepared for. It might catch you, out of right field kind of thing. How do you handle that when it happens?
Yeah, I think you state the elephant in the room. Like you don't try to just mumble until a thought comes to you because that's what most people will do. I'm
Right.
just going to start talking and I am praying that a thought comes to my mind, right?
Right.
So just take a moment and go, "Wow, thank you for that question. That is a great question. I'm not sure that I have ever answered that, and I've not prepared for it. So let me be raw with you. And then
Mm.
later, if I think of something that I think would bring greater clarity, I'll come back to you.
Hmm.
You have just bought yourself about 10 to 15 seconds to be able to answer. And then you answer to the best that you can. I don't think you ever just want to go, I have absolutely no idea. um
Right.
I'm just not a fan of that. Like we want to be able to think a little quicker on our feet than that, and I know that that doesn't work for everybody, but just own the elephant in the room.
Hmm.
That's a great question. Where did you come up with that question? Turn it around on them, flip
Hmm.
it back to them.
Hmm.
Ask them, what are you really looking for?
Right.
What do you really want to know?
Hmm.
um and just get conversational and buy yourself some thinking time as you have them elaborate a little bit.
That's so good. All right, so you already touched on this a little bit now, but what do you do? Maybe at the end of the interview, there's usually a moment where you start switching, and now they're not interviewing you, you're interviewing them. You're asking them the questions. What questions do you recommend that you ask?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of questions. If they have not already done it, you want to ask them, say, can you give me a day in the life of this role? What will my role look like day to day, week to week, month to month? So start there at the high level. I also think you would say to them, why is this position available?
Mm.
Like, why has it come available? Um, 90 days from now, if I were to be hired in this role, what would a win look like? Like, what would be your primary
That's good.
hope for me inside of this role? And then I love this one, and you got to say it with the right tone. So you got to practice it a little bit. But you can say, when I exceed your expectations in this position, what kind of growth opportunities do I have to continue evolving in my leadership and my whatever it is under your direction?
Those are great. Those are
They're
so good.
fun and
Yeah.
they're strategic. You're planting little seeds inside of their mind,
Hmm.
even as you're finding out information you really need to know about the position.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the last thing is don't say whatever you do. Don't say, nope, I don't have any questions. You answered them all for me. That is the kiss of death in
Mm,
an interview.
mm. Uh, I've heard somebody say this before, and I think this seems extremely wise. I've given this counsel to people before. The last question you should ask, or at least one of the last questions, I guess, is there anything in this interview that you've heard from me that would prevent you from hiring me in this position? What do you think
Oh
about that?
gosh, that is a great question. Absolutely. Because you want to get in front of the objections
Right.
at the very beginning. The other thing you can do is towards the end, you can say, would this be a great time for me to share my references with you?
Mm,
Because if they're not interested in you, they're not going to take your references.
mm.
So by doing that, you have a feel for, okay, what does this look like? Are they interested or are they not interested?
Right, right. I love that question there because you can always you can if they have an objection to you, now you get to respond to that. If they say, "Well, you don't have the experience," or "Well, you don't have the education," or whatever it might be, now you get to actually give your own apologetic to that problem that they have with you. Maybe you have other ones for this too, but are there questions we should not be asking? And you and I have interviewed people and we've seen this. It's like, and the questions are, how much time do I have off? And the questions, they seem to insinuate a laziness even in the way they ask the questions. Are there any questions you would think of that you probably shouldn't be asking these particular questions?
Well, I think those questions are fine in the right context.
Hmm,
I don't think they're the first questions you ask. The
right,
first questions you ask really kind of reveal what's the most important to you. And let's face it, we all want to be paid. We
right.
want to know, we want to have great benefits. Um, I think one of the oddest questions I think I ever received was, um, I've heard some rumors about your company. I wonder if you can shed some light on whether that's true or not. I read an article about it. I think some of those have time and place um, components because it might be relevant, right? You could be Enron, and
Oh yeah,
there might be some
yeah,
things we
yeah.
need to know about you, right? But I think all of those questions are questions that it's just about the timing. I really don't think that there's anything that's off limits. Um, I just think it's about timing. And I think
Mhm.
it's about the way you ask the question.
That's so good. That's so good. All right. So, what's one thing that somebody can do the night before an interview to set themselves up for success? Or not even throw that out there, maybe even the morning of the interview as well.
Okay, so put on the clothing that you're going to wear for
Mm,
that interview
mm.
and sit in it, walk in it,
Wow.
move in it. Like, what do you have in your hand? You should have a portfolio, a notebook, a pen of some sort in your hand. Ladies like to come in with these Mama Jamma purses, and I get it because I like Mama Jamma purses myself. But then you're digging for a pen and you need it. So,
Yeah.
lay your stuff out. Read your resume again. Like, read your resume again.
Mm,
Think about how you're going to respond. If you have not researched the company, now's a good moment to research the company.
mhm,
And if you know who you're interviewing with, get on LinkedIn and look them up,
mm.
right?
That's good.
People hire people. We're looking for any kind of relational connection we can make right out of the get-go. And people's favorite topics are themselves. And so if I know that you went to X school or you played sports here or you're involved in this LinkedIn group or whatever it is, it creates that connection opportunity for you
Mhm.
so that when you walk in you can immediately begin connecting. So just do your homework ahead of time. Double check the address, double check the time, make sure you know who you're asking for. And you didn't ask me about this one, but this one's huge.
Okay.
Be super, super kind to the person at the front desk.
Mm,
I have seen people blow interviews not because they couldn't do the job and
mm.
they had turned on all the charms with the person they were interviewing with, but they were rude to the receptionist.
Wow.
Don't do that. Like, it's number one, don't do that because you're a bad human, but just don't do that. But number two, if you're in an interview, definitely don't do that.
That's such good advice. I would throw this out there too. You mentioned getting your clothes ready and walking in them. I would say, I mean, and I practice this every Sunday morning, but get your clothes ready the night before so it's less stress the morning of.
A
You don't
hundred
need any
percent.
particular thing that's going to stress you out, or you get up and find out that there's a traffic jam and it's going to take you 45 minutes longer, so you don't have time just try to make that morning as simple as possible. And I think that can go a long way.
Absolutely.
All right, Pastor Tina, thank you so much for being with us again this week. I know it's been such a joy for all of our audience to hear from you and anybody who's looking for their next job and walking through the interview process. I know this has been a blessing for them. If people want to find you on Instagram or your website or your ebooks or your other physical books, how do they do that?
Yeah, go right to my website, tinablunt.com, BLOUNT.com, and it will connect you to all of my social media followings as well as just being able to message me and connect with me directly.
So good. So, speaking of the books that you've written, you wrote a book recently. It's probably your most recent published book at the time of this recording called Your Life is a Tree of Possibilities. Next week, we're going to look at that a little bit and explain what that looks like. How do we find what is our gifting, our calling? How do we step into that calling? And so, next week on the show, we're going to talk about that a little bit with Tina Blount. It's going to be so good. And as I said last week, and I'll probably say again next week and the following, this may not be for you this week. Maybe you have a stable career right now and you're not looking for a job, but you probably know somebody who is. So do me a favor and copy this, send it over to them, and just encourage them to watch it because I think it can be a huge blessing to a lot of people. So thank you so much for being a part today. Thank you, Pastor Tina. Thank you for everybody who is watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. I love to read your comments every single week. This time, I bet Pastor Tina might even read your comments too. And so leave a comment. And then if you're watching or listening on any podcasting service like Spotify, make sure that you give us a rating on there so other people can find it as well. But next week, we are going to dive into the subject of your life as a tree of possibilities. Make sure you not miss it. God bless you guys.